It's 9,000 years ago, and you're lying on a woven mat inside a mud brick house. The night air is cool. Your grain jars sit stacked against the wall, your insurance against winter, against famine, against everything. And outside you hear something move. Not the heavy pad of a wolf, not the bone laugh of a hyena, something lighter. You step out with a torch. Two green reflections flash in the dark. A small striped body slips between shadows. A Near Eastern wildcat, silent, focused, not hunting you, hunting the mice that are chewing through your future. You don't throw a stone. You don't shout. You let it work. Here's the paradox. This animal is solitary, territorial, almost impossible to command. It doesn't form packs. It doesn't look to you for approval. It doesn't submit. And yet somehow, this aloof desert predator becomes one of the most widespread pets on Earth. Dogs joined our tribes. Cats joined our infrastructure. To understand how that happened, we have to ask a deeper question. What changed in human history that made room for a creature like the cat? The big question, who domesticated whom? So here's the real question. How did wildcats become ancient human pets, and were they ever truly pets at all? When we imagine domestication, we picture humans capturing animals, breeding them, reshaping them through force and selection. Wolves become dogs. Aurochs become cattle. It feels intentional, controlled. But cats don't quite fit that story. There was no grand taming event, no dramatic moment where humans bent the wildcat to their will. Instead, what unfolded was slower, quieter, an ecological partnership shaped by agriculture, exploding rodent populations, and a species already perfectly designed to live on the margins of human settlements. This story has layers. The agricultural revolution that changed everything. The biology of the Near Eastern wildcat, Felis sylvestris, libicasata, creature unusually comfortable with solitude. And the strange quirks of human psychology that turned a useful hunter into a sacred symbol. One of the reasons cats integrated so easily is something so subtle. You've probably never noticed it. But to see it clearly, we have to go back before cats were pets, before cities, before even the first granary walls were built, before the bowl, wildcats in a prehistoric world, long before litter boxes and laser pointers. The Near Eastern wildcat moved through scrubland and dry forests. 12,000 years ago. Felis sylvestris libica was small, striped, and built for patience. A crepuscular hunter, most active at dawn and dusk, it specialized in rodents and birds. It didn't need a pack. It didn't coordinate complex group hunts. Unlike wolves, it evolved to live alone, defending a territory, raising kittens in secrecy, surviving by stealth rather than loyalty. And then humans changed the landscape. Around 10,000 BCE, the Neolithic revolution began reshaping the Near East. We stopped wandering and started planting. Farming created surplus grain. Surplus grain attracted rodents in staggering numbers, and rodents inevitably attracted wildcats. This was the chain reaction. Humans didn't trek into the desert to capture kittens and tame them. Wildcats came to the settlements on their own, drawn by an all-you-can-eat buffet of mice nesting in mud brick, walls and storage pits. Where humans built cities, mice built empires. And where mice thrived, cats followed. We even have archaeological proof. In Cyprus, a 9,500-year-old grave contains a human buried carefully beside a cat. Cats aren't native to Cyprus. They had to be transported by boat, intentionally. Dogs were actively bred from wolves for cooperation. Cats likely selected themselves into our proximity. So yes, food explains a lot, but that's only the beginning. At the most practical level, the explanation seems almost boring. Cats were pest control. If you're an early farmer, your stored grain is survival. A single infestation of mice can mean hunger, even death by winter. Any settlement that tolerated a few wildcats, lurking around its storage pits, would lose less food. Fewer losses meant healthier families. Healthier families meant more surviving children. Over generations, villages that allowed cats to linger had a quiet but measurable advantage. Natural selection didn't just act on humans. It acted on the cats. Wildcats that were slightly less fearful of humans could exploit rodent-rich environments. Inside settlements, the boldest, least reactive individuals got the best hunting grounds. Meanwhile, humans who resisted the urge to drive them off reaped economic rewards. Mutual tolerance became mutually beneficial. Genetic studies today show that modern domestic cats descend largely from Felis sylvestris libica, but the changes are surprisingly subtle compared to dogs. Early cats weren't bred for obedience or affection. They were semi-wild commensals, more like raccoons or pigeons living alongside us than loyal companions at our feet. They weren't cuddly. They were useful. But if rodent control was the whole story, cats would have stayed in barns. They didn't, they ended up in temples. And that raises a deeper question. Why did humans start worshipping the very predator that just controlled their pests? By the time we reach ancient Egypt, something extraordinary has happened. Cats are no longer just tolerated hunters slipping between granaries. They are sacred, linked to Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, and protection. Cats are painted on tomb walls, sculpted in bronze, wrapped carefully in linen after death. Killing a cat, even accidentally, could be punishable by death. Millions were mummified. That seems extreme for pest control. But in a civilization built along the Nile, where survival depended on predictable grain harvests, rodent control wasn't a minor convenience. It was stability. Cats guarded the food supply from rats and snakes, creatures associated with chaos and destruction. In that sense, a cat wasn't just an animal. It was a living barrier between order and disaster. And then there's their strange duality. A mother cat is tender, almost delicate with her kittens. The same animal can disembowel a snake with surgical precision. Nurturing and lethal, domestic and wild. That paradox mirrored divine feminine, archetypes, creation and destruction in one body. Here's the counterintuitive part. Cats weren't worshipped because they were obedient. They were worshipped because they were independent. Dogs served humans. Cats looked like they didn't need to. That aura of self-possession, of controlled danger, made them feel less like property and more like small gods, moving through human space, which forces us to rethink domestication itself. Maybe it isn't always about domination. Sometimes it's about proximity to power. But there's a deeper biological reason cats could live among us without becoming fully submissive. And it's something almost nobody talks about. Here's where biology quietly rewrites the story. Wolves had to be transformed into dogs through intense selection for social cooperation. Wolves are deeply social animals. They rely on hierarchy, coordinated hunting, pack structure. To domesticate a wolf, you have to reshape that entire social system around humans. Wildcats were different. They were already solitary. They didn't depend on complex hierarchies to survive. They hunted alone, defended territories alone, raised young alone. That low social dependency made partial domestication easier. They didn't need to see us as pack leaders. They just needed to tolerate us. Genetically, domestic cats show far less divergence from their wild ancestors than dogs do from wolves. Much of the change isn't in their bodies. It's in their behavior. Reduced fear response, increased tolerance, a slightly softer edge. And then there's the meow. Adult cats rarely meow to each other. That vocalization is mostly for kittens. But adult cats meow constantly to humans, often in higher-pitched, almost infant-like tones. It's a neoteny-like trait that taps straight into our caregiving instincts. The house cat didn't become more obedient. It became better at pushing our psychological buttons. For 10,000 years, we thought we domesticated the cat. The cat just figured out how to hack the ape. And this is where the power dynamic gets weird. Ancient partnership versus modern cat world. For most of their history beside us, cats had a job. They earned their place in human settlements by protecting food, stores, and controlling vermin. It was a clear exchange, shelter and tolerance in return for survival insurance. But fast forward a few thousand years and the relationship looks very different. Industrialization pulls humans out of small, farming communities and into dense cities. Grain storage becomes centralized. Pest control becomes mechanized. And cats slowly shift from working animals to companions. In the last few centuries, selective breeding accelerates not for hunting efficiency but for appearance. Flatter faces, longer fur, exotic patterns. The survival tool becomes a sacred symbol, then a luxury pet, then somehow an internet celebrity. And here's the uncomfortable part. Globally, domestic cats are now among the most impactful invasive predators. Free-ranging cats contribute to massive declines in bird populations and have been linked to multiple extinctions, especially on islands. This is where things start to go off the rails. An animal once integrated carefully into human ecosystems now exists in environments evolution never prepared it for. So what does this strange partnership actually reveal about us? What cats reveal about humans? If you zoom out far enough, the story of cats stops being about cats. Humans don't just domesticate animals for labor. We form alliances when interests overlap. Agriculture created a rodent problem. Wildcats evolved to solve rodent problems. No grand conquest was required, just proximity and patience. Domestication, in this case, wasn't domination. It was negotiation. Compare that to dogs. Dogs reflect our love of loyalty, hierarchy, clear social bonds. They look to us for cues. They synchronize with us. Cats are different. They reflect something else in human nature, our tolerance for independence, for boundaries, even for a little indifference. We didn't need them to obey, we needed them to hunt. That flexibility says something profound about our species. We are social strategists. We can bond with predators not only by breaking them, but by aligning incentives until coexistence becomes natural. In a world where survival meant storing food against winter, the difference between famine and safety might have had whiskers, and maybe that's why we're still captivated by them. Evolutionary psychology suggests we're drawn to competence. Grace, controlled danger. A cat embodies all three. It moves like it knows something you don't, which makes the animal sleeping on your couch feel a little less ordinary and a lot more ancient. The cat on your couch. Look at your cat right now. Maybe it's stretched in a rectangle of sunlight, paws twitching in a dream. Maybe it's staring out a window, tracking movements you can't even see. Under the softness, under the purring, is the nervous system of a desert hunter. The reflexes are still there. The patience. The ability to sit completely still and then explode into motion in less than a second. You didn't just adopt a pet. You inherited a 10,000-year-old treaty. An agreement shaped by grain stores, mice, river valleys, and moonlit settlements. An agreement where neither side was fully conquered. The cat never became livestock. It never became a servant. It remained itself, just close enough to us to matter. Somewhere in the dark near the first granary ever built, a wildcat made a simple decision: stay. And because it stayed, civilizations changed. Quietly, one mouse at a